A sapphire brooch vanishes from a grand English manor. But this is no ordinary theft, it's the opening move of a shadowy mastermind known only as the Owl. Who is this elusive predator, orchestrating a web of crime from the shadows? Poirot, the world's greatest detective, steps into the fog-choked halls of Ashford Manor, armed with a secret weapon no one suspects, his uncanny ability to read the hidden truths in a glance, a gesture, a lie. As cryptic notes marked with an owl symbol pile up, a young woman vanishes, and a trail of clues leads from London's underworld to a burning Scottish lair. Will Poirot unravel the conspiracy before the owl strikes again? Or will the masterminds' final trap ensnare him? From a tense dinner table to a glittering gala showdown, follow Poirot as he chases a villain whose reach threatens to unravel a family's legacy. One question lingers: can even Poirot's little grey cells outwit a shadow that sees all? Chapter 1. The whisper of a clutha. Late autumn mist clung to the rolling hills of Shropshire like a gossamer veil, softening the sharp edges of Ashford Manor's Gothic spires. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed in a tailored overcoat and polished shoes, stepped from the chauffeured car onto the gravelled drive. His moustache twitched as he inhaled the damp air, his sharp eyes scanning the manor's facade, its ivy-clad walls, tall windows glinting like wary eyes, and the faint silhouette of a gargoyle perched on the roof. The invitation to solve a theft had piqued his curiosity, but it was the undercurrent of unease in Lord Reginald Ashford's letter that truly summoned him. A trifling matter, the letter had claimed, yet its hurried script betrayed a deeper disquiet. Poirot adjusted his hat, his gloved fingers brushing the brim with precision, and murmured to himself, "Trifling, Nan, we shall see." His companion, Captain Arthur Hastings, bundled in a tweed jacket, shivered beside him. Less at the chill and more at the manor's imposing aura. "Looks like a place where secrets fester." Poirot, Hastings said, his voice low as they approached the heavy oak doors. "A stolen brooch, you say? Seems an odd summons for a man of your talents." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Mon cher Hastings, it is not the brooch, but the hands that stole it that interest me. The human heart, it betrays itself in the smallest of thefts, and I, Poirot, have my methods to uncover such betrayals." The doors swung open, revealing a butler whose gaunt face and rigid posture suggested he had been carved from the manor's own stone. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," he intoned, his voice as crisp as the frost on the lawn. "Lord Ashford awaits you in the drawing-room." They were led through a labyrinth of corridors adorned with ancestral portraits, their painted eyes seeming to follow the visitors. The air carried the scent of old wood and beeswax, mingled with a faint trace of lavender perhaps from a lady's perfume. Poirot's keen senses noted every detail: a scuff on the parquet floor, a curtain slightly askew, a distant clink of china. Each was a thread in the tapestry of the mystery he was about to unravel. In the drawing-room, Lord Reginald Ashford stood by a roaring fire, his silver hair catching the glow. He was a man of 60, broad-shouldered but stooped, as if the weight of his title pressed upon him. Beside him stood his family, his son, Charles, a lean figure with a restless gaze, his daughter, Eleanor, whose delicate features belied a guarded intensity, and his sister, Lady Beatrice, whose sharp eyes and pursed lips suggested she missed nothing. A young woman, introduced as Miss Clara Duval, the family's ward, hovered near Eleanor, her hands clasped nervously. "Welcome, Monsieur Poirot," Lord Ashford said, his voice warm but strained. "Your reputation precedes you. We are in a rather delicate situation. Poirot inclined his head. A sapphire brooch, I understand, has vanished from your collection. A family heirloom. Precisely, Lord Ashford replied, gesturing to an empty velvet case on the mantel. It belonged to my late wife, a gift from her grandmother, worth a small fortune, but its sentimental value is priceless. It was taken from the safe 2 nights ago. No sign of a break-in, no trace of the thief. Charles snorted, crossing his arms. It's one of the staff, father, has to be. They're the only ones with access to the safe's room. Eleanor shot her brother a withering look. Don't be absurd, Charles. The staff have been with us for years. You're just eager to point fingers. Enough, Lady Beatrice snapped, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Monsieur Poirot, we need this resolved discreetly. The Ashford name cannot afford scandal. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he surveyed the room, his secret weapon already at work. It was not a gadget or a dossier, but something far more potent, his unmatched ability to read the human soul through the subtlest of cues, the flicker of an eyelid, the tightening of a jaw, the unconscious shift of a foot. Years of studying. Human psychology had honed this skill, transforming fleeting gestures into a language only he could decipher. To Poirot, the body spoke louder than words, and this room was a cacophony of silent confessions. Permit me, Mies, Amos, to ask a few questions, Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. Who was last to see the brooch? Clara Duval raised a trembling hand. I saw it in the safe 3 days ago, when I helped Lady Beatrice catalogue the jewellery. It was there, sparkling under the light. And the safe, Poirot continued. It is opened how? A combination known only to the family, Lord Ashford said. And, I suppose, the butler, Grayson, who oversees the household. Grayson, standing silently by the door, stiffened almost imperceptibly. Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the minute clench of the butler's fist. A thread to tug later, he thought. The conversation continued, each family member offering their version of events. Charles insisted on a servant's guilt, his voice tinged with impatience. Eleanor spoke of a recent guest, a Mr. Victor Crane, whose charm had seemed too polished. Lady Beatrice dismissed the idea of an outsider, her tone dripping with disdain for new money. Clara, nervous and soft-spoken, mentioned a strange noise in the night, a faint tapping, like a bird, at a window. Poirot listened, his head tilted, his mind cataloguing every word and gesture as the family dispersed. For tea, Poirot lingered by the mantel, examining the empty velvet case. Its hinges were pristine, the lock unforced. He ran a gloved finger along the edge, his thoughts racing. No violence, no disruption, he murmured to Hastings, who had joined him. This was a theft of precision, of intimacy. The thief knew. The manners, rhythms. Hastings frowned. So, someone inside. But who? They all seem rattled. Rattled, yes, Poirot said, his voice low, but not all for the same reason. Observe, Hastings, the eyes, the hands, the posture. They speak when the tongue is silent. Hastings squinted, seeing nothing but a room of tense aristocrats. You and your little grey cells, Poirot. Care to share what you're seeing? Poirot chuckled. Patience, mon ami. The little grey cells, they work best in silence. But I will say this, there is more here than a stolen jewel. There is a shadow behind the shadow. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft thud from the hallway. Poirot's head snapped up, his senses alert. He glided to the door, Hastings trailing, and found a small leather-bound book lying on the floor, as if dropped in haste. Its cover was embossed with a faint owl motif, barely visible in the dim light. Poirot's pulse quickened. He knelt, careful not to touch the book directly, and used a handkerchief to lift it. Inside the cover was a folded note, its edges worn but its ink fresh. "Regardes," Poirot said, unfolding it with care. The note read, "The owl watches. The sapphire is but the first. Seek the truth, but beware the cost." Hastings' eyes widened. "The owl, what's that about?" Poirot's expression was grave, yet a spark of excitement danced in his eyes. "It is a signature, Hastings, not of a common thief, but of one who plays a larger game. This owl, he, or perhaps she, wishes to be known, yet not seen. Challenge, Nan." He tucked the note into his pocket, his mind already weaving theories. The owl motif was no coincidence. It was a deliberate clue, a taunt, but from whom? The family's discord suggested hidden motives, and Grayson's subtle tension hinted at knowledge unspoken. Poirot's secret weapons stirred, urging him to probe deeper into the manor's undercurrents. "Let us return to the drawing-room," Poirot said, his voice calm but resolute. "I wish to observe the family once more. The note changes everything." As they re-entered, the family was seated for tea, their conversation stilted. Poirot declined a cup, preferring to stand by the window, where the fading light cast long shadows. He watched Eleanor's fingers tremble as she stirred her tea, Charles' restless tapping of his foot, and Lady Beatrice's rigid posture, her eyes darting to the mantel where the brooches case sat empty. Clara, meanwhile, kept her gaze lowered, her hands twisting a napkin into knots. "Monsieur Poirot," Lord Ashford said, breaking the silence, "have you any theories yet?" Poirot turned, his smile enigmatic. "Theories, Lord Ashford? Oh, I have many. But a theory without evidence is like a bird without wings. It cannot fly. Tell me, have any of you heard of the owl?" The room froze. Eleanor's teacup clattered against its saucer. Charles' foot stopped mid-tap. Lady Beatrice's lips tightened, and Clara's napkin slipped to the floor. Grayson, serving scones, paused for a fraction of a second long enough for Poirot's keen eyes to catch. "The owl," Lord Ashford echoed, his brow furrowing. "Sounds like some nonsense from a penny dreadful." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone light but his gaze piercing. "Yet I find that nonsense often hides truth. I shall continue my inquiries, with your permission." As the family murmured their assent, Poirot felt the weight of their secrets pressing closer. The note, the owl motif, the theft, they were pieces of a puzzle far larger than a missing brooch. His secret weapon, his ability to read the unspoken, would be his guide through this labyrinth of deception. The chapter closed with Poirot stepping into the corridor, the note burning in his pocket, and a resolve forming in his mind. The owl would not remain hidden for long. The manor's clock struck 6, its chime echoing through the halls like a warning. Poirot paused, his hand brushing the note in his pocket. He turned to Hastings, his voice a whisper. "This, mon ami, is but the beginning. The owl has left a trail, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall follow it. With my little grey cells and my secret weapon I shall uncover the truth." The mist outside thickened, shrouding Ashford Manor in mystery. Poirot's moustache twitched once more, a sign that his mind was alight with purpose. The game had begun, and he was ready to play. Chapter 2. The unseen observer. The morning sun pierced the Shropshire mist. casting a pale glow through the tall windows of Ashford Manor's servants' quarters. Hercule Poirot, his suit pristine despite the early hour, stood in the narrow hallway, his eyes scanning the worn floorboards and faded wallpaper. The air smelled of starch and coal dust, a stark contrast to the opulence of the Manor's main halls. Captain Hastings, stifling a yawn, leaned against a doorframe, his tweed jacket slightly rumpled from a restless night. "Poirot, are you sure about this?" Hastings asked, his voice hushed. "Grilling the staff first thing in the morning. They'll be half asleep, and we've got that cryptic note to deal with." Poirot's mustache quivered with a faint smile. "Mon cher Hastings, the staff are the pulse of this house. They see what the family does not, and their secrets are written not in words, but in their faces, their hands, their hesitations. My secret weapon, it thrives in such moments." He referred, of course, to his unparalleled ability to interpret micro-expressions and body language, a skill honed through years of studying human behavior with an almost scientific precision. To Poirot, a fleeting glance or an unconscious gesture was as revealing as a signed confession. The note from the previous night, with its ominous mention of the owl, had set his mind ablaze, but he knew the key to unraveling its meaning lay in the Manor's undercurrent, starting with those who moved unseen. The servants' hall was a cramped room with a long oak table, where the staff gathered for their morning tea. Grayson, the butler, stood at the head, his gaunt face as unyielding as ever, overseeing the others. Mrs. Harrow, the stout housekeeper with a perpetually furrowed brow. Polly, a young maid with darting eyes. Tom, a lanky footman whose fingers fidgeted with a teaspoon. And Cook, a broad woman whose apron strained against her frame. They stiffened as Poirot entered, their chatter falling silent. "Bonjour, Mies. Amos," Poirot said, his voice warm but laced with authority. "I am Hercule Poirot, here to inquire about the unfortunate loss of the sapphire brooch. I trust you will assist me with candor." Mrs. Harrow folded her arms. "We're honest folk, sir. None of us would touch the family's things." "Not," Poirot replied, his eyes sweeping the room. "Yet someone has, and I seek only the truth. Tell me, who among you was near the safes room 2 nights ago?" The question hung in the air. Polly's gaze flicked to Tom, who froze, his teaspoon clattering against his saucer. Grayson's posture remained rigid, but his left hand twitched a subtle sign. Poirot's secret weapon caught instantly. Mrs. Harrow huffed, and Cook busied herself with a teapot, avoiding eye contact. "I was polishing silver in the pantry," Polly said quickly, her voice high, "nowhere near the safe." "And I was in the stables," Tom added, too fast, his Adam's apple bobbing, checking the horses. Poirot nodded, his expression serene but his mind cataloguing every nuance. Tom's rapid speech, the slight dilation of his pupils, the way his fingers gripped the teaspoon, they screamed discomfort. The footman was hiding something, though whether it was guilt or fear, Poirot could not yet say. Mercy, Poirot said. "And you, Monsieur Grayson? Your duties take you throughout the Manor, Nan." Grayson met Poirot's gaze, his eyes like polished flint. "I was in my quarters, preparing the household accounts. I saw nothing unusual." Poirot's secret weapon stirred. Grayson's voice was steady, but the faintest tightening of his jaw betrayed a lie or at least a half-truth. Poirot filed it away, turning to Cook. "And you, madame? The kitchen is the heart of the house. Did you hear or see anything?" That night, Cook's hands paused on the teapot. Just the usual noises, pots clanging, the wind outside. Though she hesitated, her cheeks reddening. There was a shadow by the back door, late-like. Thought it was a fox, but it moved. Odd, odd. Poirot leaned forward, his tone encouraging. Describe this shadow, s'il vous plaît. Tall. Cloaked, Cook said, her voice dropping. Moved quick, like it didn't want to be seen. Near the servants' entrance, by the herb garden. The room tensed. Polly gasped softly, and Tom's teaspoon fell to the table. Grayson's eyes narrowed, a flicker of alarm crossing his face before he masked it. Poirot's secret weapon hummed, decoding the silent language of the room. Cook's description was genuine, her flushed cheeks signaling embarrassment at speaking. Up. Tom's reaction, however, was pure panic, and Grayson's fleeting alarm suggested knowledge he wasn't sharing. Most interesting, Poirot said, clasping his hands. A cloaked figure in the night. Perhaps a visitor, or perhaps something else. I shall need to inspect this herb garden. As the staff dispersed, Poirot beckoned Hastings to follow him outside. The herb garden was a modest patch behind the manor, bordered by a low stone wall. The air was crisp, scented with rosemary and thyme, but Poirot's focus was on the ground. He knelt, his gloved fingers tracing faint indentations in the soft earth boot prints, narrow and deep, suggesting a man of light build but deliberate step. Regard us, Hastings, Poirot said, pointing to the prints. These are fresh, no more than 2 days old. Our cloaked figure was here, and not by chance. Hastings squinted. Could be one of the gardeners, Poirot, or a poacher. Nan, Poirot said, rising. A gardener does not wear boots so fine, and a poacher does not linger by a servant's entrance. This is someone who knows the manor's layout, someone connected. They returned to the manor, where Poirot requested a private word with Tom, the footman. The young man was led to a small parlour, his lanky frame hunched. As he sat across from Poirot, Hastings stood by the door, arms crossed, watching with curiosity. Monsieur Tom, Poirot began, his voice gentle but probing. You were not entirely truthful earlier. Your hands, they betray you. The teaspoon, the rapid speech signs of unease. Tell me, what did you see that night? Tom's eyes widened, his fingers twisting together. I didn't steal nothing, sir. I swear it. I do not accuse you of theft, Poirot said, leaning forward. But you saw something, the shadow, perhaps, or something more. Tom swallowed, his gaze darting to the window. Poirot's secret weapon zeroed in, the footman's dilated pupils, the sweat beading on his brow, the way his left hand clenched and unclenched. Fear, not guilt, Poirot deduced. I was in the stables, Tom whispered, his voice barely audible. Checking the horses, like I said, but I saw someone by the garden wall near midnight. Cloaked, like Cook said. He was watching the house. I thought he'd see me, so I hid. Didn't tell no one, 'cause I was scared. Scared of what? Poirot pressed, his tone soft but insistent. Tom's voice dropped lower. The way he moved, sir, like a ghost, and there was something in his hand, a knife, I think, gleamed in the moonlight. Poirot's pulse quickened, but his face remained impassive. A knife, you say? And this figure did you see his face? Tom shook his head. Too dark, but he was tall, thin, moved like he owned the place. Mercy, Tom, Poirot said, dismissing him. As the footman hurried out, Poirot turned to Hastings, his eyes alight. A cloaked figure with a knife, Hastings. This is no ordinary thief. The owl, he is bold, but careful. He leaves clues, yet hides his face. Hastings frowned. You think this owl chap is behind the brooch theft, but why the knife? And why? Wash the house. Poirot paced, his mind racing. The brooch is a pretext, mon ami, a piece in a larger game. The owl wishes to unsettle, to control. But he has made a mistake, he has been seen. The day progressed with Poirot interviewing the remaining staff, each conversation layered with subtle observations. Mrs. Harrow's brusque manner hid a loyalty to the family, but her quick glances at Grayson suggested distrust. Polly's nervousness stemmed from a fear of losing her position, not guilt. Grayson, however, remained an enigma, his controlled demeanor betrayed only by the occasional tightening of his lips. A sign Poirot's secret weapon flagged a significant dot. By evening, Poirot sat in the manor's library, a fire crackling in the hearth. He spread a sheet of paper on the desk, sketching a rough profile of the owl, tall, thin, calculated, possibly familiar with the manor. The knife suggested a threat beyond mere theft, and the owl motif hinted at a symbolic agenda. Poirot's secret weapon had given him the first threads of the mystery, but the tapestry was far from complete. Hastings, he said, folding the paper, we have a predator in our midst, but he is not invisible. Tomorrow we shall pull these threads and see what unravels. The chapter closed with Poirot gazing into the fire, the note from the owl tucked safely in his pocket. His secret weapon had confirmed one truth. The manor was a stage, and the owl was its unseen director. But Poirot was no mere player. He was a master, ready to turn the hunter into the hunted. Chapter 3. The shadow moves. The dawn broke over Ashford Manor with a reluctant glow, the mist lingering like a conspirator unwilling to depart. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the herb garden, his polished shoes damp from the dew, his eyes fixed on the boot prints he had discovered the previous day. The air was sharp with the scent of wet earth and crushed sage. But Poirot's mind was elsewhere, replaying the footman Tom's trembling confession of a cloaked figure with a knife. The owl, it seemed, was not content to steal and vanish, was watching, waiting, and perhaps planning something far darker than a theft. Captain Hastings joined him, his breath visible in the chilly air. Poirot, you've been out here since sunrise. Found anything new in those prints? Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his restless intellect. The prints, mon ami, they tell a story of purpose. See how they press deeper at the heel. Our owl moves with caution, yet with intent. He was not merely passing through, he was observing, calculating. Hastings squinted at the ground, seeing only mud. You're sure it's this owl fellow? Could be some vagrant, spooked by Tom. Nan, Hastings, Poirot said, straightening. A vagrant does not leave a note signed the owl. A vagrant does not carry a knife that gleams in the moonlight. This is a mind at work, and I, Poirot, shall uncover it. Their conversation was cut short by a piercing scream from the direction of the stables. Poirot's head snapped up, his senses alert, and he strode toward the sound with surprising speed. For a man of his fastidious nature, Hastings followed, his longer legs struggling to keep pace. They arrived to find Polly, the young maid, standing at the stable door, her face pale as chalk, her hands clutching her apron. Monsieur Poirot, she gasped. It's Tom, he's hurt. Inside the stable, the air was thick with the scent of hay and horseflesh. Tom lay slumped against a wooden beam, his lanky frame crumpled, a trickle of blood seeping from a gash on his temple. His eyes fluttered, half-conscious, as Poirot knelt beside him. The other servants, Mrs. Harrow, cook, and Grayson, gathered at the entrance. Their expressions a mix of shock and suspicion. "Viat Hastings, fetch water and a cloth," Poirot ordered, his voice calm but commanding. As Hastings hurried off, Poirot examined Tom, his gloved fingers probing the wound with care. The injury was shallow, more a warning than a fatal blow. His eyes darted to the beam above Tom's head, where a crude symbol had been carved into the wooden owl, its wings spread, its eyes mere slashes but unmistakably menacing. The owl, Poirot murmured, his secret weapon stirring. That weapon his ability to read the unspoken language of human behavior had already served him well, but now it extended to the environment itself. The carving was fresh, the wood chips still clinging to the beam. This was no random act. It was a message, bold and deliberate. Tom stirred, groaning. "Didn't see him," he mumbled. "Heard a noise, then darkness." Poirot's eyes softened, but his mind was razor-sharp. "Rest, Monsieur Tom. You are safe now. But tell me, did you hear anything else? A voice, perhaps, a step?" Tom's brow furrowed, his voice weak, a rustle like a cloak, and a whisper. "Couldn't make it out." Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. As Hastings returned with water and a cloth, Poirot cleaned Tom's wound, his movements precise but gentle. The servants watched, their faces a canvas of emotion. Harrow's lips tight with worry, cook's hands wringing her apron. Grayson's gaze steady but his fingers twitching at his side. Poirot's secret weapon catalogued each reaction: fear, guilt, or perhaps complicity. "Grayson," Poirot said, rising, "summon a doctor, and ensure Tom is moved to a safe room. The rest of you return to your duties. I shall speak with you." Later, as the servants dispersed, Poirot led Hastings back to the herb garden, his mind racing. The owl grows bold, Hastings. To attack in broad daylight, to leave his mark, this is not the act of a mere thief. He wishes to instill fear, to control the narrative. Hastings frowned, kicking a pebble. "But why, Tom? He's just a footman. And that owl carving ghastly thing. What's it mean?" "It is a signature," Poirot said, his voice low, a taunt. "The owl knows we are close, and he seeks to warn us off. But he has underestimated Hercule Poirot. Determined to outmaneuver their elusive foe, Poirot devised a plan. We must set a trap, Hastings. The owl thrives on secrecy, but he is not infallible. We shall give him something to chase a false lead, we to draw him into the open." Back in the Manor's library, Poirot gathered the family: Lord Ashford, Charles, Eleanor, Lady Beatrice, and Clara Duvalin, the presence of Grayson. The fire crackled, casting shadows that danced across the bookshelves. Poirot stood before them, his demeanour calm but authoritative, his secret weapon attuned to every flicker of expression. "Mies Amos," he began, "the theft of the sapphire. Brooch is but the surface of a deeper mystery. I have reason to believe the culprit, this owl, is still near. To catch him, I require your cooperation. I have learned of a second heirloom, a diamond locket, kept in the West Wing. I shall inspect it tonight to ensure its safety." The lie was subtle, designed to provoke. There was no diamond locket, but Poirot's secret weapon had detected enough tension in the room to know that someone, perhaps more than one, would react. Eleanor's fingers tightened on her shawl, Charles' jaw clenched, and Lady Beatrice's eyes narrowed. Clara glanced at Lord Ashford, who remained impassive, though his knuckles whitened on his cane. Grayson, standing by the door, shifted his waiter. "Tell Poirot," noted instantly. "Very well," Lord Ashford said, his voice heavy. "Do what you must, Monsieur Poirot, but be discreet." As the family dispersed, Poirot lingered, watching Grayson closely. The butler's composure was near perfect, but his hands betrayed him, folding and unfolding a pocket square with unnatural precision. Poirot approached, his tone casual. "Grayson, a word. You have served the Ashfords long, You must know the Manor's every secret." Grayson's eyes met Poirot's, unflinching. "I do my duty, sir. Nothing more." "Been, sir," Poirot said, smiling. "Yet duty sometimes blinds us to irregularities. If you recall anything unusual, you will inform me, Nan." Grayson nodded curtly and excused himself. Poirot's secret weapon hummed. The butler knew more than he admitted, but fear or loyalty held his tongue. That evening, Poirot and Hastings positioned themselves in the west wing. Near a locked room Poirot had claimed held the fictitious locket. The corridor was dim, lit only by flickering sconces, the silence broken by the occasional creak of the old house. Poirot's plan was simple. If the owl took the bait, he would come, and Poirot would be ready. Hours passed, the manor settling into an uneasy quiet. Then a faint scrape echoed from the stairwell. Poirot's hand tightened on his cane, his senses alert. A shadow moved, swift and silent, cloaked in dark fabric. Hastings tensed, but Poirot signalled for silence, his eyes tracking the figure. It paused at the locked door, producing a slender Tula lockpick. Perhaps Poirot stepped forward, his voice cutting through the darkness. "Bonsoir, mon ami. You seek a locket that does not exist. Shall we discuss why?" The figure froze, then bolted, but Hastings, primed for action, tackled them to the ground. The struggle was brief, revealing not the owl, but Polly, the maid, her face flushed with panic. In her hand was a folded note, its edges marked with the same owl motif. "Monsieur Poirot, I didn't mean no harm," Polly cried, her voice trembling. "I was just following orders." "Orders from whom?" Poirot demanded, his secret weapon. Catching the terror in her eyes, Polly sobbed, handing over the note. "I don't know his name. He leaves notes, tells me what to do. Said to check the locket, see if it was real." Poirot unfolded the note, his heart quickening. It read, "The locket is a test. Report its location." The owl sees all. He dismissed Polly with a stern warning to remain silent, tucking the note into his pocket. The chapter closed with Poirot standing in the moonlit corridor, the weight of the mystery growing heavier. His trap had snared a pawn, but the owl remained a shadow, orchestrating from afar. Yet Poirot's secret weapon had confirmed one truth: the game was escalating, and he was ready to meet the challenge. Chapter 4. A Game of Motives. The dining hall of Ashford Manor gleamed under the chandelier's soft light, its long mahogany table set with crystal and silver that reflected the flickering candles. The air was heavy with the scent of roasted pheasant and rosemary, but beneath the opulence, tension simmered like a storm waiting to break. Hercule Poirot stood at the head of the table, his compact frame commanding the room with quiet authority. His polished shoes gleamed, his moustache was immaculate, and his eyes sharp as a hawk scanned the Ashford family seated before him. Lord Reginald Ashford, his son Charles, his daughter Eleanor, his sister Lady Beatrice, and their ward, Clara Duval. Captain Hastings sat to Poirot's right, his expression a mix of curiosity and unease. Sensing the drama about to unfold, Poirot had orchestrated this dinner with precision, knowing that the revelation of Polly's involvement as the owl's pawn would ripple through the household. His secret weapon, his unparalleled ability to read micro-expressions and body language, would be his guide tonight. The owl's note, tucked safely in his pocket, had confirmed a larger conspiracy, and Poirot was determined to provoke reactions. That would reveal the family's hidden motives. Each member, he suspected, held a piece of the puzzle, and the dining table was his stage. Mise, Amos, Poirot began, his voice smooth but laced with intent. Tonight we dine not only to nourish the body but to illuminate the truth. The theft of the sapphire brooch is no isolated act. It is a thread in a tapestry of deception, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall unravel it. Lord Ashford cleared his throat, his silver hair catching the candlelight. Monsieur Poirot, we appreciate your diligence, but surely this is a simple matter. A servant, perhaps, tempted by the brooch's value. Charles, slouched in his chair, snorted. Told you, father. It's one of the staff. Probably that skittish maid, Polly, always sneaking about. Eleanor's eyes flashed as she set down her wine-glass with a sharp clink. Charles, you're quick to accuse those beneath us. Perhaps you should look closer to home. The brooch was mother's. Maybe someone in this room wanted it for themselves. Lady Beatrice's lips thinned, her voice cutting like glass. Eleanor, mind your tone. This family has enough scandal without your insinuations. Clara, sitting quietly, twisted her napkin, her knuckles white. I just want this to be over, she murmured, her voice barely audible. Poirot's secret weapon hummed, catching every tell. Charles' restless fingers tapping the table, a sign of defensiveness. Eleanor's flushed cheeks and dilated pupils, hinting at suppressed anger. Lady Beatrice's rigid posture, masking unease. Clara's trembling hands, betraying fear rather than guilt. And Lord Ashford's furrowed brow, a mix of worry and resignation. The room was a symphony of unspoken truths, and Poirot was its conductor. Let us speak of motives, Poirot said, pacing slowly along the table. The brooch, it is not merely a jewel, Nan. It is a symbol of heritage, of love, of power. Lord Ashford, you called it priceless for its sentiment. Yet sentiment can breed envy, resentment, even betrayal. Lord Ashford stiffened. What are you implying, Monsieur Poirot? Nothing, yet everything, Poirot replied, his tone deceptively light. Let us consider who benefits from the brooch's absence. Charles, you are the heir, but the estate is burdened with debt, is it not? A jewel sold discreetly could ease such burdens. Charles' face reddened, his fist slamming the table. How dare you? I'd never stoop to theft. I'm no pauper skulking in the shadows. Poirot's eyes gleamed, noting the flare of Charles' nostrils, a sign of genuine outrage, but also of something deeper, perhaps shame. Calm yourself. Monsieur Charles, I merely explore possibilities. Mademoiselle Eleanor, you loved your mother dearly. The brooch was hers. Did its presence remind you of a loss too painful to bear? Eleanor's gaze dropped, her fingers tightening on her shawl. You're cruel to suggest it, she whispered, but her voice cracked, and Poirot caught the flicker of her eyelids, tell of hidden grief, and perhaps a secret. Enough of this, Lady Beatrice snapped, rising from her chair. You're turning us against each other, Monsieur Poirot. The brooch was stolen by an outsider, not family. That guest, Victor Crane, was far too interested in our collection. A charming rogue, if you ask me. Clara flinched at Crane's name, her napkin falling to the floor. Poirot's secret weapon zeroed in. Her shoulders hunched, her breath quick in fear, not surprise. She knew something about Crane, but fear held her silent. Victor Crane, Poirot mused, pausing by Clara's chair. A name mentioned before, by Mademoiselle Eleanor. Tell me, Mademoiselle Duval, what did you think of this gentleman? Clara's eyes darted to Eleanor, then back to her plate. He was polite, asked a lot about the manor, the family. I didn't think much of it. Poirot smiled, but his gaze was piercing. And yet your hands tremble. The body, it speaks when the lips are silent. You saw something, perhaps. Something you fear to share. Clara's lips parted, but no words came. The room fell silent, the only sound the crackle of the fire. Poirot let the moment stretch, his secret weapon reading the room's pulse. Lord Ashford's knuckles whitened on his wine-glass. Charles shifted uncomfortably, and Eleanor's eyes burned with an intensity Poirot couldn't yet decipher. The dinner continued, but the atmosphere was brittle, each bite and sip punctuated by wary glances. Poirot steered the conversation to lighter topics. The weather, the manners, history, while observing every gesture. As dessert was served, a rich plum tart, Eleanor excused herself, claiming a headache. Poirot noted the haste in her steps, the way her shawl slipped to reveal a folded paper tucked in her sleeve. Curious, Poirot murmured to Hastings as the family retired to the drawing-room. Mademoiselle Eleanor carries a secret, and it weighs heavily. Hastings raised an eyebrow. You saw that paper. Could be nothing a shopping list, perhaps. Nan, Hastings, Poirot said, his voice low. A shopping list does not make one's hands shake. Follow her, discreetly. See where she goes. As Hastings slipped away, Poirot lingered in the dining hall, approaching the spot where Eleanor had sat. On the floor, half hidden by the tablecloth, was the folded paper. She had dropped. Poirot retrieved it with a handkerchief, unfolding it with care. The script was hurried, the ink smudged. Meet me at the Old Oak, midnight. The owl demands it. Poirot's pulse quickened. The owl again, and now linked to Eleanor. His secret weapon had been right. Her guarded intensity, her fleeting glances, they pointed to a deeper involvement. But was she a conspirator or a victim? The note suggested coercion, but Poirot needed more to be certain. He rejoined the family in the drawing room, where Lady Beatrice was recounting a tale of the manor's founding, her voice sharp with pride. Charles lounged by the fire, sipping brandy, while Clara sat quietly, her eyes fixed on her lap. Lord Ashford stood by the window, staring into the night. Poirot's secret weapon scanned them all, noting Charles' forced nonchalance, persistent anxiety, and Lord Ashford's distracted air. Hastings returned, his expression grim. Poirot Eleanor went to the library. She was burning something in the fireplace, looked like another note. I couldn't get close enough to see it. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Burning evidence, perhaps. She is entangled, Hastings, but how deeply? The owl's web is wide, but I shall cut through it. He excused himself, claiming a need to review his notes, and retreated to his guest room. There, by lamplight, he spread the owl's note beside the one from the brooches case, comparing their script. The handwriting differed, but the owl motif was identical, a deliberate signature. Poirot's secret weapon stirred, recalling Eleanor's micro-expressions, her trembling lips, her averted gaze. She was hiding something, but fear, not guilt, dominated her demeanor as midnight approached. Poirot donned a dark overcoat and slipped into the garden, heading for the old oak mentioned in the note. The tree loomed at the edge of the estate, its gnarled branches clawing at the moonlit sky. He concealed himself in the shadows, waiting. At precisely midnight, Eleanor appeared, her figure cloaked in a shawl, her steps hesitant. She stopped beneath the oak, glancing around nervously. A rustle sounded, and a figure emerged, a man, tall and thin, his face obscured by a hood. Poirot's heart raced, but he remained still, his secret weapon attuned to the scene. The man whispered something to Eleanor, who shook her head, her voice low but audible. "I did what you asked. Leave me alone." The man's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. "The owl isn't done with you," he hissed, his voice low and menacing. Before Poirot could intervene, Eleanor wrenched free and fled back to the manor. The man melted into the darkness, leaving only the rustle of leaves. Poirot stepped forward, examining the ground where they had stood. A single item caught his eye, a torn scrap of paper, bearing a single word, trust. The chapter closed with Poirot standing beneath the oak, the scrap in his hand, his mind ablaze with questions. The owl's grip on Eleanor was clear, but her role-pawn or player remained uncertain. His secret weapon had uncovered a new thread, and though the night had yielded answers, it had also deepened the mystery. Poirot's resolve hardened. He would follow this thread, no matter where it led. Chapter 5. The code unravelled. The library of Ashford Manor was a sanctuary of shadows. Its towering bookshelves, heavy with leather-bound tomes and the scent of aged paper. Hercule Poirot sat at a carved oak desk, a single lamp casting a golden pool of light across the scattered notes before him. The scrap of paper from the old oak, bearing the word trust, lay beside the owl's earlier messages, their cryptic owl motifs mocking his efforts. Outside, the Shropshire night pressed against the windows, a tapestry of stars obscured by wisps of fog. Captain Hastings paced near the hearth, his footsteps muffled by the thick Persian rug, his brow furrowed with impatience. "Poirot, that meeting at the O'Callaghan's in deep, isn't she?" Hastings said, pausing to warm his hands by the fire. "And that hooded man, he's got to be the owl, or at least his right hand. Why didn't we nab him then and there?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "Mon cher Hastings, to catch a shadow, one must first understand its shape. The man at the oak was a messenger, not the master." Eleanor's fear, her whispered defiance, "They tell me she is ensnared, not complicit. And this," he tapped the scrap of paper, "this is a clue, but not yet a key. His secret weapon, that extraordinary ability to read the nuances of human behavior, had served him well at the oak." Eleanor's trembling posture, the hooded man's aggressive grip, they spoke of coercion, not collusion. But the note she had dropped, and the word trust, suggested a deeper game. Poirot's mind, ever methodical, turned to the note she had burned in the library, its ashes now lost to the flames. He needed to decode her secrets, and the paper before him was his starting point. Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled, his eyes half closed as he summoned memories of past cases. His secret weapon extended beyond reading faces. It was rooted in a vast mental archive of psychological patterns, ciphers, and human habits. Years ago, in Brussels, he had cracked a smuggler's code hidden in love letters, each word a mask. For a smuggling route, the owl's notes, with their terse phrasing and symbolic motifs, felt eerily familiar. Cipher, perhaps. Cloaked in simplicity, regarders, Hastings, Poirot said, spreading the 3 notes side by side. The first. From the brooch's case, the owl watches. The sapphire is but the first. Seek the truth, but beware the cost. The second from Polly, the locket, is a test. Report its location. The owl sees all, and the scrap with trust. These are not mere taunts. They are a code, a message within a message. The owl is clever, but he leaves a trail. Hastings squinted at the papers. A code, they just look like threats to me. That owl symbol's creepy, I'll give you that, but a code. Poirot chuckled softly. The little grey cells, they see what the eyes do not. Observe the note is brief, yet precise. The word trust it is out of place, none. A single word, torn from context. I suspect it is a key, or perhaps a warning. He took a pencil and began transcribing the notes, underlining key words, watches. First, truth, cost, test, location, seize, trust. His secret weapon stirred, drawing on his knowledge of ciphers. He recalled a case in Vienna where a spy used acrostics to conceal meeting places. Testing a hunch, he wrote the first letter of each underlined word. W, F, T, C, T, L, S, T, the sequence, W, F, T, C, T, L, S, T, C, and random. But Poirot's mind churned, seeking patterns. An anagram, perhaps. He murmured, rearranging the letters. After several attempts, he paused, his pencil hovering. Nan, not an anagram, a substitution, perhaps, or a location. He turned to the Manners map, pinned to the desk, a detailed sketch he had requested from Grayson. The Manners grounds, sprawled across acres, dotted with landmarks, the old oak, the herb garden, the stables, and a crumbling folly by the lake. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he traced the map, his secret weapon connecting the note's imagery to geography. The owl watches our high vantage point, perhaps the folly's tower. The sapphire is but the first a sequence, suggesting other targets. Seek the truth, but beware the cost, a warning tied to a specific place. Then it struck him. He circled a point on the map, the Blackthorn Club, a gentleman's club in London's East End, rumoured to be a hub for illicit dealings. The word trust could be an acronym, a code for a meeting place. TRUST, the Rook's Underground Safe House, Tavern. The Blackthorn Club was known to locals as the Rook, a nod to its chess-themed decor, and its basement was notorious for clandestine gatherings. Hastings, Poirot said, his voice alight with triumph. The note is a cipher, and it points to London. The Blackthorn Club, a place where shadows meet. The owl, or his agents, will be there. We must go, but we cannot appear as ourselves. Hastings blinked. London, and what? Dress up like spies. Poirot, this is getting outlandish. Outlandish, Nan, Poirot corrected, rising. Necessary. The owl expects us to chase shadows here, but we shall surprise him in his own lair. I shall become Monsieur Antoine Dubois, a French antiquarian with a taste for rare jewels. You, Hastings, shall be my English associate, Mr. Harold Weston. Hastings groaned. Disguises, Poirot. You know I'm no good at play acting. You shall manage, Poirot said, his eyes twinkling. The little grey cells will guide us, and my secret weapon will ensure we see what others miss. The next morning, Poirot sent a discreet telegram to Scotland Yard, requesting information on the Blackthorn Club without revealing his full intent. He then summoned Grayson, asking for the Manners guest records, particularly details on Victor. Crane, the charming stranger Eleanor and Lady Beatrice had mentioned, Grayson's hesitation, a slight pause before handing over the ledger, did not escape Poirot's notice. His secret weapon flagged it. The butler was guarding a secret, perhaps tied to Crane. The ledger confirmed Crane's visit a week prior. Listed as a consultant with an address in London conveniently near the Blackthorn Club. Poirot's suspicions deepened. Was Crane the owl or another pawn? Eleanor's meeting at the Oak suggested she was under his influence, but her defiance hinted at resistance. As preparations for their journey began, Poirot visited Eleanor's room, hoping to gauge her state of mind. She sat by a window, her embroidery untouched, her eyes red-rimmed. Poirot's secret weapon caught the tension in her posture, the way her fingers clutched a locket knot, the fictitious one, but a personal keepsake. Mademoiselle Eleanor, Poirot said gently, you are troubled. The meeting at the Oak was not your choice, was it? Eleanor's head snapped up, her lips parting. How did you know? The heart, it speaks, Poirot said, his tone soothing. You are caught in a web, but you need not face it alone. Tell me of this man, this owl. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. I can't. He'll know. He always knows. Poirot nodded, respecting her fear, but filing away her words. His secret weapon confirmed her terror was genuine, her resistance fragile but real. He left her with a promise. I shall protect you. Mademoiselle, trust in Poirot. By afternoon, Poirot and Hastings were on a train to London, their disguises ready. Poirot as the flamboyant Antoine Dubois, complete with a monocle and a velvet waistcoat, and Hastings as the stolid Harold Weston, in a drab suit that made him grimace. In Poirot's valise was a sketch of the owl motif, a photograph of the brooch, and the decoded note, each a piece of the puzzle. As the train rattled through the countryside, Poirot stared out the window, his mind mapping the Blackthorn clubs. Layout from rumours and yard contacts. The club was a maze of private rooms and hidden passages, perfect for the owl's schemes. His secret weapon would be vital there, reading the faces of strangers in a den of secrets. The chapter closed with the train pulling into London's smog-choked station, the city's pulse thrumming around them. Poirot adjusted his monocle, his heart steady despite the danger ahead. The owl had laid a trail, but Poirot was no mere follower. With his secret weapon, he would turn the hunter's game against him, and the code unravelled was only the beginning. Chapter 6. Into the Lion's Den. The Blackthorn Club crouched in a narrow alley of London's East End, its soot-stained brick facade blending into the city's underbelly. Gaslights flickered, casting jagged shadows on the cobblestones, while the air carried the mingled scents of coal smoke, cheap gin, and damp wool. Hercule Poirot, disguised as Antoine Dubois, adjusted his velvet waistcoat and monocle, his moustache heartfully altered with a touch of wax curling with theatrical flair. Beside him, Captain Hastings, as Harold Weston, tugged at his ill-fitting suit, muttering about the indignity of playing a stuffy clerk. The night was alive with the clatter of hooves and distant laughter, but Poirot's focus was razor-sharp. His secret weapon, his ability to read micro-expressions and body language primed for the challenge ahead. The decoded note from Eleanor had led them here, to this den of secrets where the owl's operatives were rumoured to gather. Poirot's plan was bold. Infiltrate the club, observe its patrons, and identify the hooded man from the Oak, or, if fortune favoured, the owl himself. The owl motif notes, the attack on Tom, and Eleanor's fear all pointed to a conspiracy far beyond a stolen brooch. Poirot's little grey cells churned, weaving threads of motive and menace. "Poirot," Hastings whispered as they approached the club's iron-bound door, "this place gives me the creeps." "You sure about this? We're walking into a viper's nest." "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied. His French accent thickened for his role as Dubois. "But vipers, they strike only when they feel threatened. We shall be as shadows, observing, listening. My secret weapon, it will guide us." A burly doorman, his face scarred like a battle-worn map, eyed them suspiciously. Poirot flashed a forged invitation, procured through a discreet Scotland Yard contact, and adopted Dubois' flamboyant demeanour. "Antoine Dubois, antiquarian." "Extraordinaire," he declared, gesturing grandly. "My associate, Monsieur Weston. We seek the finest treasures your club offers." The doorman grunted, inspecting the invitation before stepping aside. "Down the stairs. Don't cause trouble." The Blackthorn Club's interior was a labyrinth of dim corridors and smoky rooms, its walls adorned with chessboards and rook-shaped sconces. The air was thick with cigar smoke and the murmur of low voices, punctuated by the clink of glasses and the shuffle of cards. Poirot's senses sharpened, his secret weapon scanning the crowd, a portly man wiping sweat from his brow. A woman with a too-tight smile, a group of men in tailored suits exchanging furtive glances. Every gesture, every flicker of an eye, was a clue. They settled at a corner table, ordering brandy to blend in. Hastings leaned close, his voice barely audible. "How do we even start? This place is crawling with shady types." "Observe, Hastings," Poirot whispered, his monocle glinting. "The body betrays the mind. Look for the one who watches too closely, whose hands are too still, whose eyes do not match their smile." As a waiter passed, Poirot caught a glimpse of a familiar face across the room, a tall, thin man with sharp features and a polished air. Victor Crane, the consultant from the Manor's guest ledger, stood by a velvet curtain, speaking. To a man in a dark overcoat, Crane's smile was charming, but Poirot's secret weapon caught the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers brushed his cufflinks a nervous tick. "There," Poirot murmured, nodding subtly. "Monsieur Crane, he is no mere guest. Watch him, Hastings." Crane's companion slipped behind the curtain, and Poirot decided to act. He rose, adopting Dubois' swagger, and approached a nearby group playing cards. "Messieurs, a game." "Perhaps," he said, his accent thick. "I am told the Blackthorn offers unique stakes." The players, a mix of rough-looking men and polished gentlemen, eyed him warily. One, a grizzled man with a scar across his cheek, grinned. "You got the coin, Frenchie. You're in. What's your game?" Poirot smiled, his secret weapon scanning. "Their faces, information, monsieur. I seek a rare piece of sapphire, perhaps, or one who calls himself the Owl." The table fell silent, the players' expressions hardening. The grizzled man's grin faded, his eyes narrowing. "You ask dangerous questions, friend. Best stick to cards." Poirot's secret weapon caught a tell. The man's left hand twitched, his knuckles whitening. Fear, not anger. The Owl's name carried weight here. Poirot pressed further, his tone light but probing. "A pity. I had hoped to meet this Owl. A collector of rarities, Nan." A younger player, his face flushed with drink, leaned forward. "You don't find the Owl. He finds you. And you don't want that." Before Poirot could respond, a commotion erupted near the curtain. Crane was arguing with a burly man, their voices low but heated. Poirot's ears caught a snippet. The sapphires secure, but the girl's trouble. Eleanor, Poirot thought, his pulse quickening, He signalled Hastings, and they moved closer, blending into the crowd. Poirot's secret weapon zeroed in. On Crane's micro-expressions, a clenched jaw, a fleeting glance toward the curtain, a bead of sweat on his temple. Crane was nervous, perhaps cornered. Poirot needed to test him. "Pardon, monsieur," Poirot said, stepping forward as Dubois. "You are Victor Crane. I am told you know of fine jewels, perhaps one, recently acquired." Crane's eyes widened, but he recovered quickly, his smile smooth. "You've mistaken me, sir. I'm no jeweller, just here for a drink." Poirot's secret weapon caught the lie. Crane's pupils dilated, his fingers brushing his cufflinks. "Again, a pity," Poirot said, feigning disappointment. "I had heard of a sapphire taken from a manor in Shropshire. A piece fit for—" The owl Crane froze, his smile faltering. The burly man beside him stepped closer, his hand slipping inside his coat. Poirot's heart raced, but his face remained serene. "No matter," he said, stepping back. "I shall seek elsewhere." As he retreated, Poirot whispered to Hastings, "Crane is our man, or one of them. We must follow him." They trailed Crane through the club, keeping to the shadows. He slipped behind the velvet curtain into a narrow passage lit by flickering lamps. Poirot's secret weapon guided him, noting the tension in the air, the way patrons avoided the passage. At its end was a heavy door, guarded by a man with a boxer's build. Crane knocked twice, whispered something, and was admitted. Poirot turned to Hastings. "We cannot follow directly, but we shall plant a seed. Return to the bar, Hastings, and spread a rumor. Antoine Dubois has a buyer for a sapphire brooch, but only if the owl himself negotiates." Hastings blinked. "You're baiting him, Poirot? That's madness." "Nan, it is strategy," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "The owl craves control. He will not resist a challenge." As Hastings carried out the plan, Poirot lingered near. The passage, his secret weapon attuned to the guard's movements. The man's restless pacing, his frequent glances at the door, suggested he expected trouble. Poirot's rumor was a gamble, but a calculated one. Minutes later, the door burst open and Crane emerged, his face pale. He scanned the room, his eyes locking on Poirot. Before Poirot could react, two men appeared from the crowd, their movements swift and purposeful. "Time to leave," Frenchy, one growled, grabbing Poirot's arm. Poirot's secret weapon kicked into overdrive, reading their intent, not to kill, but to intimidate. He twisted free, his cane striking the man's wrist with surprising force. "Messieurs, you mistake me for a fool," he said, his voice icy. Hastings, alerted by the scuffle, rushed over, fists raised. The men backed off, melting into the crowd, as shouts echoed from the bar. Poirot and Hastings slipped out a side door, emerging into the alley's chill. Poirot's heart pounded, but his mind was clear. "Crane is the owl's lieutenant," he said, catching his breath. "The rumor worked," he panicked. "We have shaken the nest." Hastings panted, adjusting his tie, "and nearly got us killed." "What now, Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. "We return to the manor. The owl knows we are close, and he will act. But I, Poirot, am ready." The chapter closed with the two men hurrying through London's fog-choked streets, the Blackthorn Club's secrets lingering like smoke. Poirot's secret weapon had confirmed Crane's role, but the owl remained a shadow. The game was far from over, but Poirot had drawn first blood. Chapter 7. The double-cross the train back to Shropshire rattled through the dawn. its rhythm a counterpoint to the storm brewing in Hercule Poirot's mind. The Blackthorn Club had confirmed Victor Crane's role as the Owl's lieutenant, but the master remained elusive, a shadow pulling strings from afar. Poirot, still in the guise of Antoine Dubois, adjusted his monocle, though his eyes were distant, replaying the night's events. Captain Hastings slumped beside him, his borrowed suit creased, his face etched with exhaustion from their narrow escape. "Poirot," Hastings muttered, rubbing his temples, "we stirred up a hornet's nest back there. Crane's onto us, and who knows what the Owl will do next? Was it worth it?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile beneath it. "Worth it, mon ami. For we have forced the Owl to move. He is no longer invisible. My secret Whodunit has seen the cracks in his armor." That secret weapon, Poirot's uncanny ability to read micro-expressions and body language, had been vital in the club's smoky chaos. Crane's nervous tics, the guards' restless pacing, the patrons' guarded glances, they had painted a picture of a network under strain. Now, back at Ashford Manor, Poirot aimed to exploit that strain, using the manor's own tensions to draw the Owl closer. As the train pulled into the station, Poirot shed his disguise, resuming his polished self. The manor loomed through the morning mist, its Gothic spires like sentinels guarding secrets. A chill hung in the air, sharper than the day before, and Poirot's senses were alert. The attack on Tom, Eleanor's clandestine meeting, and the owl motif notes all pointed to a conspiracy rooted in the household. His secret weapon would guide him through its labyrinth. Upon arrival, Poirot learned from Grayson that Eleanor had not been seen since breakfast. The butler's voice was steady, but his fingers, adjusting his cufflinks, betrayed unease. "Tell Poirot's secret weapon flagged instantly." "She left a note, sir," Grayson said, handing over a folded paper. "Said she was visiting a friend in the village." Poirot unfolded the note, his eyes narrowing. The script was Eleanor's, but its brevity gone to see Mary, back by evening, felt forced. His secret weapon stirred, recalling her trembling posture at the oak, her whispered defiance to the hooded man. This was no casual visit. Eleanor was running or being summoned. Double quotes, Hastings Poirot said, tucking the note away. "We must find Mademoiselle Eleanor. She is the key, and the Owl knows it. Gather the staff I wish to know their movements this morning." While Hastings rounded up the servants, Poirot slipped into Eleanor's room. A space of soft blues and delicate lace, its femininity at odds with the fear he knew she carried. His search was methodical. A jewelry box, empty save for a broken pearl earring, a diary, its pages frustratingly blank, and a wardrobe, its contents neatly arranged but for a shawl missing from its hook, the same shawl she wore at the oak. Beneath her pillow, he found a small brass key, its surface etched with a faint owl symbol. Poirot's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary key, but a clue to the owl's operations. He pocketed it and joined Hastings in the servants' hall, where Mrs. Harrow, cook, Polly, and Grayson stood in uneasy silence. Tom, still recovering, was absent. Poirot's secret weapon scanned their faces, Mrs. Harrow's pursed lips, Cook's fidgeting hands, Polly's downcast eyes, Grayson's rigid stance. Each held secrets, but Grayson's micro-expressions, fleeting grimace, a tightening of his jaw marked him as the most guarded mise. Poirot began, his voice calm but commanding. "Mademoiselle Eleanor is missing. Her note suggests a visit, but I suspect otherwise. Who saw her leave?" Polly's hands twisted her apron. I saw her at dawn, sir, heading toward the stables. She had a bag, like she was in a hurry. Grayson's eyes flickered. A tel Poirot caught. She informed me of her plans, the butler said smoothly. I arranged a carriage to the village. Poirot's secret weapon hummed. Grayson's voice was too controlled, his hands too still. Mercy, Grayson. And this carriage, did you see her board it? Grayson hesitated, a fraction too long. I assumed she did, sir. Assumed, Poirot repeated, his tone mild but piercing. A dangerous habit, Nan. We shall verify. He dispatched Hastings to the stables to question the coachman, who confirmed no carriage had been taken. Eleanor had vanished on foot, or worse, been taken. Poirot's mind raced, connecting the brass key to the Almatif notes. The owl was tightening his grip, and Eleanor was his leverage. Determined to outmaneuver their foe, Poirot devised a sting operation. Hastings, he said, returning to the library, we shall use the owl's own tactics against him. Victor Crane is his lieutenant, and he is close. We shall lure him here, to the manor where my secret weapon can expose him. How? Hastings asked, his brow furrowed. Crane's in London, and we don't even know where Eleanor is. Nan mon ami, Poirot said, holding up the brass key. This key, it is a signal. I believe it unlocks something within the manor safe, a box, perhaps a message from the owl. We shall spread word that we have found it, and that it holds evidence of his identity. Crane will come, and we shall be ready. Poirot instructed Grayson to discreetly inform the village telegraph office of a breakthrough in the brooch case, knowing the news would reach Crane's ears. He then searched the manor for the key's lock, his secret weapon attuned to subtle clues. A scuff on a baseboard, a rug slightly askew. In the attic, amid dusty crates and cobwebs, he found a locked wooden box, its lid carved with an owl. The brass key fit perfectly, revealing a bundle of letters, orders from the owl, detailing thefts across England, all signed with the owl motif. One letter stood out. Addressed to Eleanor, deliver the brooch, or your secret will be exposed. Poirot's secret weapon confirmed his suspicions. Eleanor was being blackmailed, her fear rooted in a hidden shame. But what? Before he could ponder further, Hastings burst in, breathless. Poirot, a man matching Crane's description, was seen in the village, asking about the manor. He's coming. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Bon. Prepare the drawing room. We shall receive Monsieur Crane as a guest and a suspect. That evening, Crane arrived, his polished charm intact but his eyes wary. Poirot greeted him as himself. No longer Dubois, his secret weapon scanning every gesture. Crane's smile was tight, his fingers brushing his cufflinks, sir. Nervous tick Poirot had noted at the Blackthorn Club. Monsieur Crane, Poirot said, offering a seat, you return to Ashford Manor at a curious time. A key has been found, one that unlocks secrets. Perhaps you know of it. Crane's smile faltered, his pupils dilating. I'm merely here to offer my sympathies, Monsieur Poirot. The brooch's loss is tragic. Poirot's secret weapon caught the lie, but before he could press, a scream echoed from the hall. It was Clara, pointing to a cloaked figure fleeing through the garden. Hastings gave chase, but the figure vanished into the woods. Crane seized the moment, slipping out the front door. Poirot, unfazed, turned to the letters. His sting had worked. Crane was rattled, and the cloaked figure confirmed the owl's presence. He summoned the authorities, ensuring Crane's arrest at the village inn. where he was found with a forged passport and a knife etched with an owl. The chapter closed with Poirot in the library. The owl-carved box before him. Crane was caught. But the owl remained free, and Eleanor was still missing. His secret weapon had exposed one layer of the conspiracy, but the mastermind's shadow loomed larger. Poirot's resolve hardened. He would find Eleanor and unmask the owl, no matter the cost. Chapter 8. The Hidden Hand. The morning after Victor Crane's arrest. Ashford Manor seemed to hold its breath. The mist had lifted, revealing a sky of bruised grey, as if the heavens themselves mirrored the unease within the estate. Hercule Poirot stood in the manor's conservatory, its glass walls streaked with condensation, the air thick with the scent of damp ferns and blooming orchids. His gloved fingers traced the edge of a potted jasmine, but his mind was elsewhere, piecing together the fragments of the owl's conspiracy. The owl-carved box, its letters exposing a network of thefts, had confirmed that the sapphire brooch was merely a pawn in a larger game. Eleanor's disappearance, however, was the pressing concern. Her absence, a wound in the household's fragile harmony. Captain Hastings entered, his boots scuffing the tiled floor, his face etched with frustration. Poirot, Crane's locked up, but he's not talking. Scotland Yard's got nothing from him, just that smug smile, and Eleanor's still gone. Where do we even start? Poirot's moustache twitched, his eyes sharp as he turned from the jasmine. Mon ami, the owl has not vanished, he has merely retreated. The letters from the box, they speak of a network, and networks have roots. We shall find Eleanor by following these roots, and my secret weapon will light the way. That secret weapon, Poirot's unparalleled ability to read micro-expressions and body language, honed by years of studying human psychology, was now attuned to the manor's undercurrents. Crane's arrest had shaken the owl's web, but the mastermind remained elusive, and Eleanor's role, victim or accomplice, remained unclear. The letters had hinted at blackmail, but Poirot needed more to trace the owl's reach. He began by re-examining the letters from the owl-carved box, spreading them across a wicker table in the conservatory. Each detailed the theft jewels, paintings, rare manuscripts stolen from estates across England, all bearing the owl motif. One phrase recurred: the hidden hand moves unseen. Poirot's secret weapon stirred, recognizing a symbolic boast. The owl saw himself as a puppeteer, orchestrating chaos from the shadows. Hastings, Poirot said, pointing to a letter. This mentions a scribe who records the owl's dealings. A historian, perhaps, or an archivist. Someone with knowledge of symbols, of artifacts. We must find this scribe. Hastings frowned, rubbing his chin. A historian, in Shropshire, seems a stretch, Poirot, unless... His eyes widened. What? About that professor Lady Beatrice mentioned, the one who visited last month, poking around the manor's archives. Poirot's head snapped up. Oui, Professor Lydia Marrow. She was cataloguing the Ashford collection, was she not? A scholar of antiquities with a particular interest in symbols. He recalled Lady Beatrice's passing comment about Marrow's visit, her tone laced with disdain for bookish types. Poirot's secret weapon had caught the flicker of unease in her eyes then, a detail he had filed away. Now it took on new weight. Marrow's expertise could link her to the owl symbols, perhaps even to the owl himself. Determined to pursue this lead, Poirot dispatched Hastings to the village to inquire about Marrow's whereabouts, while he sought out Lady Beatrice. He found her in the drawing-room, arranging roses in a crystal vase. her movements precise, but her face taut with worry. The room was heavy with the scent of flowers and wax polish, the morning light casting long shadows across the parquet floor. "Lady Beatrice," Poirot began, his tone courteous but probing, "you spoke of Professor Lydia Marrow. A scholar, oui. Tell me of her visit. Did she show interest in the brooch, or perhaps other artifacts?" Lady Beatrice's hands paused, a rose stem snapping in her grip. Lydia Marrow. She was a nuisance, important. The rose stem incident is a great example of an unexpected, emotionally charged event that could derail the conversation. Try to stay focused, but if you must respond to it, acknowledge the event calmly and steer the conversation back to the topic. Nuisance, here to poke around the archives. Always asking about old symbols, runes, that sort of thing. Poirot's secret weapon caught the slight tightening of her lips, a sign of guardedness. And the owl symbol, Madame. Did she mention it? Lady Beatrice's eyes narrowed, but her voice remained steady. She did, actually. Said it was a medieval cipher, used by secret societies to mark their treasures. I thought it fanciful nonsense. Poirot's pulse quickened, but his face remained serene. Most interesting. And where is Professor Moreau now? She lives in Oxford, I believe, Lady Beatrice said, resuming her arrangement. A recluse. From what I hear, rarely leaves her study. Poirot thanked her and withdrew, his mind racing. A medieval cipher explained the owl motif's persistence. And Marrow Bee's system, Marrow's expertise in medieval ciphers, could be the key to unraveling the owl's network. Poirot excused himself, promising to return after arranging for a local contact to verify Marrow's address. The contact confirmed she was in Oxford, and Poirot sent a telegram requesting her presence at the manor. By midday, Poirot was back. In the conservatory, the owl-carved box and its letters spread before him. Piecing together the next move, Hastings burst in, his face flushed. "Poirot, Moreau's agreed to meet us in Oxford tomorrow. She sounded cagey, but she's coming." "Cagey, you say?" Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. His secret weapon had caught Marrow's hesitation on the phone, a subtle quiver in her voice that suggested she knew more about the owl symbols than she had let on. "Born, we shall prepare a warm welcome, and bring the letters." The chapter closed with Poirot standing in the conservatory, the brass key from Eleanor's room glinting in his hand. The hidden hand was moving, and Eleanor was still missing. His secret weapon had exposed Crane's role, but the owl's shadow loomed larger than ever. Poirot's resolve was ironclad. He would find Eleanor, unmask the owl, and sever the hidden hand's grip, one clue at a time. Chapter 9. The auction trap, the train to Paris, clattered through the French countryside. Its rhythm a stark contrast to the frenetic pulse of Hercule Poirot's thoughts. The late afternoon sun cast golden streaks across the compartment, glinting off his polished cane as he sat, his gloved hands folded over the owl-carved letters from Ashford Manor. Captain Hastings, seated opposite, fidgeted with his cufflinks, his face a mix of excitement and unease. The journey to Paris was no whim. Professor Lydia Moreau's cryptic telegram from Oxford had pointed them here, to an underground auction rumoured to feature the stolen sapphire brooch. Poirot's secret weapon, his unparalleled ability to read micro-expressions and body language, was primed for the challenge ahead. "Poirot," Hastings said, leaning forward, "this auction sounds like a den of thieves. Are you sure we can just waltz in and spot the owl? What if it's a trap?" Poirot's moustache twitched, his eyes gleaming with resolve. "Mon ami, it is a trap, but one we shall turn to our advantage. The owl believes he controls the board, but I, Poirot, am no pawn. My secret weapon will see through his mask. The telegram from Marrow had been brief, but telling. Sapphire brooch at Paris auction, Hotel Drudo, basement. Owl's agents will attend. Be cautious. Her warning, coupled with her expertise in medieval ciphers, had confirmed her value as an ally, though Poirot's secret weapon had caught a tremor of fear in her voice during their brief phone call. She knew more than she shared, but for now, her lead was their path forward. Paris greeted them with a cacophony of clattering hooves and street vendors' cries. The Hotel Dru, a grand edifice in the heart of the city, hid its darker dealings. In a basement known only to those with the right connections, Poirot, once again disguised as Antoine Dubois, the flamboyant antiquarian, adjusted his monocle and velvet waistcoat. Hastings, as Harold Weston, grumbled about his drab suit, but followed, his eyes darting through the bustling streets. The auction's entrance was a nondescript door behind a wine shop, guarded by a wiry man with a scar across his lip. Poirot flashed a forged invitation, his French accent thick as he played Dubois. "Monsieur, we seek the rarest treasures," he said, gesturing grandly. "Antoine Dubois, at your service." The guard squinted, then nodded, ushering them into a dimly lit stairwell. The air grew heavy with cigar smoke and the murmur of voices as they descended into a cavernous room. Velvet-draped tables displayed artifacts, vases, manuscripts, jewels etched with a shadowed history. The crowd was a mix of elegantly dressed collectors and rough-edged opportunists, their eyes glinting with greed. Poirot's secret weapon scanned the room, catching subtle tells: a woman clutching her purse too tightly, a man wiping sweat from his brow, another adjusting his tie with nervous precision. At the far end, near a podium, stood a figure in a tailored suit, his posture commanding yet guarded. Poirot's heart quickened. It was not Victor Crane, now in custody, but someone new, someone with the air of authority. His secret weapon. Noted the man's clenched jaw, the way his eyes swept the room like a predator's. This was no mere bidder, Hastings. Poirot whispered, "Observe the man by the podium. He is our quarry, or close to it." Before they could approach, the auction began. The auctioneer, a sallow man with a nasal voice, calling out lots. Poirot's ears pricked as the sapphire brooch was announced, displayed on a velvet cushion, its facets catching the lamplight. The crowd stirred, bids flying in rapid French. Poirot's secret weapon focused on the auctioneer, catching a fleeting glance toward the man by the Padorma signal. Perhaps Poirot raised his paddle, his voice booming as Dubois, 10,000 francs. The bid was bold, designed to draw attention. The man by the podium stiffened, his eyes locking on Poirot. The room buzzed, and Poirot caught another tell. The auctioneer's fingers trembled as he acknowledged the bid. A sign of nerves beyond the usual. The bidding escalated, but Poirot persisted, pushing the price to dizzying heights. His secret weapon noted the man by the podium whispering to an associate who slipped into the crowd. The owl's agents were moving, and Poirot was ready. At 20,000 francs, he secured the brooch, the room erupting in murmurs. The auctioneer, visibly rattled, called a recess. As the crowd dispersed, the man by the podium approached, his smile polished but his eyes cold. "Monsieur Dubois, a fine purchase," he said, extending a hand. "I am Julien Leclerc, a facilitator of rare items. May we discuss your acquisition privately?" Poirot's secret weapon hummed, catching Leclerc's micro-expressions, a slight twitch of the lip, a flicker of calculation in his gaze. This was the owl, or his closest confidant. Naturellement Poirot replied, his tone genial, but his mind alert. Lead on, Monsieur Leclerc. They were ushered into a back room, its walls lined with tapestries, the air thick with tension. Leclerc's associate, a burly man with a scarred knuckle, stood by the door. Hastings, trailing behind, gripped his cane, ready for trouble. Leclerc gestured to a chair, but Poirot remained standing, his secret weapon scanning every detail. Leclerc's two smooth gestures, the associate's restless feet, the faint outline of a weapon beneath the man's coat. The brooch, Leclerc said, his voice low, is a piece of interest too. Certain parties, I represent them. Name your price, Monsieur Dubois. Poirot smiled, his monocle glinting. The price, monsieur, is information. I seek the one who calls himself the Owl. Perhaps you know him. Leclerc's smile froze, his pupils dilating until Poirot's secret weapon seized upon. You tread dangerous ground, Leclerc said, his tone hardening. The owl is a myth, a name to scare children. Yet myths leave footprints. Poirot countered, producing the brass key from Eleanor's room. This, for instance. It unlocks secrets, Nan. Secrets your myth wishes to keep hidden. Leclerc's hand twitched toward his pocket, but before he could act, the associate lunged. Poirot sidestepped, his cane striking the man's knee with precision. Hastings tackled the associate, pinning him to the floor. Leclerc bolted for the door, but Poirot's shout halted him. Stop, monsieur, or the gendarmes will hear of this. Leclerc froze, his face pale. The room was a chaos of overturned chairs and scattered papers, but Poirot's secret weapon had prevailed. He retrieved the brooch from the auction table, slipped it into his pocket, and signaled Hastings to release the associate. We shall take our leave, Poirot said, his voice icy. But tell your master, Hercule Poirot is not so easily outwitted. They fled through the Hotel Droux's maze, the brooch secure, but the night far from over. The Paris streets were a blur of gaslights and shadows as they dodged pursuers, Leclerc's men hot on their trail. Poirot led Hastings through alleys and side streets, his knowledge of Paris's underbelly guiding them to a safe café near the Seine. Breathing heavily, Hastings clutched the table. Poirot, we got the brooch, but Leclerc's the owl, isn't he? Nan, Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. Leclerc is another lieutenant, like Crane. The owl is too clever to appear himself. But we have struck a blow, and he will react. The chapter closed with Poirot sipping coffee, the sapphire brooch glinting in his hand. His secret weapon had navigated the auction's dangers, but the owl's shadow loomed larger, and Eleanor remained lost. Poirot's resolve burned bright. He would return to England, confront the manor's secrets, and bring the owl into the light. Chapter 10. The Betrayal. The train from Paris to London sliced through the night, its wheels humming a relentless rhythm that mirrored Hercule Poirot's racing thoughts. The sapphire brooch, now safely tucked in a hidden pocket of his overcoat, was a hard-won prize from the Paris auction, but its recovery only deepened the mystery of the owl. Beside him, Captain Hastings dozed fitfully, his head lolling against the window. The strain of their escape from Julien Leclerc's men etched into his furrowed brow. Poirot's eyes, however, were wide awake, glinting in the dim carriage light as he turned over the events of the past days. His secret weapon, his unparalleled ability to read micro-expressions and body language had guided him through the auction's dangers. but a new unease gnawed at him. Professor Lydia Marrow's cryptic telegram had led them to Paris, yet her motives remained unclear. Mon ami, Poirot murmured, though Hastings slept. The web tightens, but the spider is clever. We must tread with care. Back at Ashford Manor by dawn, the estate was shrouded in a damp fog that clung to its Gothic spires like a shroud. The air was heavy with the scent of wet stone and decaying leaves, and the manor's silence felt oppressive, as if it mourned Eleanor's continued absence. Poirot's first task was to secure the brooch in a locked drawer in his guest room, its sapphire facets a reminder of the stakes. The owl-carved letters, the brass key, and the word Trustall pointed to a conspiracy that stretched beyond the manor, with Eleanor as its unwilling linchpin. Poirot summoned Hastings to the library, where a fire crackled, casting flickering shadows across the bookshelves. "We must contact Professor Morrow," he said, his voice low but resolute. Her telegram was precise, but her ferret betrays a deeper involvement. We shall invite her here, under the pretense of discussing the brooch. Hastings rubbed his eyes, still groggy. "You think she's mixed up with the owl? She seemed helpful enough, sending us to Paris." "Helpful," Poirot said, his moustache twitching. "But the helpful hand can conceal a dagger. My secret. Weapon sensed her unease in Oxford. We shall see what her face reveals in person." A telegram was sent, and by midday Marrow confirmed her arrival that evening. Poirot spent the interim scouring the manor for clues to Eleanor's whereabouts. He revisited her room, his secret weapon attuned to subtle details, a faint perfume lingering on a scarf, a drawer slightly ajar, revealing a hidden compartment, empty save for a single feather black, with a sheen that caught the light. An owl's feather, perhaps. It was a deliberate clue left for him to find, and his pulse quickened. As evening fell, Professor Lydia Marrow arrived, her slight frame bundled in a tweed coat, her grey hair pulled into a severe bun, her eyes, sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, darted around the drawing-room where Poirot greeted her. Lord Ashford, Lady Beatrice, and Clara were present, their faces a mix of curiosity and tension. Grayson served tea, his movements precise but his fingers betraying a slight trembling. Novotel Poirot's secret weapon noted. "Professor Morrow," Poirot began, his tone courteous but probing, "your expertise in medieval ciphers led us to the brooch in Paris. A remarkable feat. Tell me, what else do you know of the owl and his symbols?" Marrow's lips tightened, her hands folding in her lap. "The owl motif is ancient, Monsieur Poirot, used by secret societies to mark their dealings, thieves, smugglers, even spies. I recognized it in the manor's archives and warned you." Of the auction, Poirot's secret weapon hummed, catching the flicker of her eyelids, the way her fingers gripped her teacup. She was telling the truth, but not all of it. "And yet," he said, leaning forward, "you knew precisely where to send us. Have you encountered the owl before?" Marrow's gaze faltered, a bead of sweat forming at her temple. "I study symbols, not criminals. I only meant to help." Before Poirot could press further, a crash echoed from the hall. Hastings leaped up, followed by Poirot, as the family gasped. In the corridor, a vase lay shattered, and a cloaked figure darted toward the garden. Poirot's heart raced, but his secret weapon caught a detail. Moreau's face, pale with terror, her eyes fixed not on the figure but on him. "Hastings, pursue." Poirot barked, but he stayed, his gaze locked on Marrow. "Madame, you know this figure, do you not?" Merrow's hands trembled, her voice a whisper. I didn't mean to betray you. He has my brother held hostage in London. The owl forced me to send you to Paris, to test you. Poirot's secret weapon confirmed her fear, her guilt genuine. Betrayed, we, but you can redeem yourself. Tell me everything now. Tears welled in Merrow's eyes as she confessed. The owl had coerced her months ago, using her brother's safety to secure her cooperation. She had catalogued the manor's artifacts, passing details to the owl's agents, including Victor Crane. The Paris auction was a trap to lure Poirot away, allowing the owl to move against Eleanor. Merrow had left the owl feather in Eleanor's room as a warning, hoping Poirot would find it. "Where is Eleanor?" Poirot demanded, his voice sharp but controlled. "I don't know," Merrow sobbed. "The owl's last message said she was safe, but only if I obeyed. He's watching always." Watching? Poirot's mind raced, his secret weapon piecing together the betrayal. Merrow was a pawn, like Polly, manipulated by fear. Eleanor's disappearance was no flight she had been taken, likely to pressure the Ashfords further. The cloaked figure. In the hall was another of the owl's agents, sent to intimidate. Hastings returned, breathless. "Lost him in the woods, Poirot, but I found this." He held up a torn glove, marked with the owl motif. Poirot nodded, his resolve hardening. "Madame Moreau, you have been used, but you are not without honor. Help me now, and I shall protect. Your brother, where does the owl operate?" Merrow hesitated, then whispered, "A manor in Scotland, Drumlanrig House. It's abandoned, but he uses it as a base. I've seen his letters." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Bon, you are now my ally, madame. We shall go to Scotland, but first we ensure your safety." He arranged for Merrow to stay under Scotland Yard's protection, her confession a turning point. The chapter closed with Poirot standing in the drawing-room, the owl-marked glove in his hand, the fire casting shadows that danced like spectres. His secret weapon had exposed Merrow's betrayal, but the owl's grip on Eleanor tightened. Scotland loomed as the next battleground, and Poirot was ready to face the shadow in its lair. Chapter 11. The owls lure the Scottish Highlands stretched before Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings like a tapestry of rugged beauty, their train slicing through mist-shrouded moors toward Drumlanrig House. The air was sharp with the scent of heather and peat, and the sky hung low, heavy with the threat of rain. Poirot sat upright, his gloved hands folded over a leather satchel containing the owl-carved letters, the brass key, and the sapphire brooch. His moustache was immaculate. Despite the journey's rigors, his eyes gleaming with the focus of a hunter closing in on his quarry. Hastings, beside him, gripped a map of the region, his face taut with anticipation. "Poirot," Hastings said, glancing out the window at the desolate landscape, "this Drumlanrig House sounds like a ghost story, abandoned, remote, perfect. For a villain like the owl, but what if it's another trap?" Poirot's lips curved faintly. "Mon ami, traps are the currency of the owl. But I, Hercule Poirot, am no stranger to such games. My secret weapon will guide us through his lair. That secret weapon, his unparalleled ability to read micro-expressions and body language, extended to interpreting the subtle cues of environments, had led them here, following Professor Lydia. Merrow's confession, her revelation that the owl used Drumlanrig House as a base, had shifted the hunt from Ashford Manor's intrigues to a new battlefield. Eleanor's disappearance weighed heavily, her fate tied to the owl's schemes. and Poirot's resolve was ironclad. He would find her and unmask the mastermind. Drumlinrig House loomed at the end of a winding path, its crumbling stone facade half claimed by ivy, its windows dark like empty eyes. The manor was a relic of forgotten grandeur, its turrets sagging under the weight of neglect. Poirot and Hastings approached on foot, their boots crunching on gravel, the air thick with the scent of damp moss and decay. A raven's caw echoed, and Hastings shivered, clutching his coat tighter. "Creepy place," he muttered. "You sure about this, Poirot? No backup, no yard, just us." "We, Hastings," Poirot replied, his voice calm but alert. "The owl thrives in shadows. We must meet him in his element, but with the light of reason." Poirot's secret weapon scanned the manor's exterior, a broken shutter swaying in the wind, a faint scuff on the doorstep, a rusted lock with fresh scratches. Someone had been here recently, and not for innocent purposes. He motioned for Hastings to stay low as they circled the building, seeking an entry. A side door, half hidden by brambles, yielded to the brass key from Elinor's room, its owl etching glinting in the fading light. Inside, the manor was a maze of dust and shadows, its halls lined with peeling wallpaper and cobweb-draped chandeliers. The air was stale, carrying the faint tints of oil and metal. Poirot's secret weapon attuned to the environment, a floorboard slightly raised, a curtain disturbed, a faint echo of footsteps from above. The owl's lair was active, and they were not alone. "Stay close, Hastings," Poirot whispered, his cane tapping softly as they moved deeper. His secret weapon guided him, noting subtle traps, a tripwire glinting in the gloom, a pressure plate disguised as a rug. He sidestepped each with precision, his mind mapping the manor's dangers. They reached a grand staircase, its banister carved with owl's confirmation of the owl's presence. At the top, a locked door bore the same owl motif as the brass key. Poirot inserted it, the lock clicking open to reveal a study, its walls lined with shelves of artifacts, golden chalices, ancient manuscripts, and jewels glinting in glass cases. In the center stood a desk piled with ledgers and maps, each marked with the owl symbol. "Regard us, Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low with triumph. "The owl's treasury. This is the heart of his network." Hastings whistled softly, eyeing a ruby necklace. "Blimey, Poirot. He's not just a thief, he's a collector. But where's Elinor?" Poirot's secret weapon scanned the room, catching a faint scratch mark on the floor near a bookcase. He pressed a panel, revealing a hidden compartment. Containing a single letter, its script hurried. "Elinor secured. Await further orders. The hidden hand prevails." Poirot's heart sank. Elinor was alive, but a prisoner. The letter bore no address, but its ink matched the owl motif notes, confirming the owl's hand. As Poirot examined the ledgers detailing thefts across Europe, a creak sounded from the hall. His secret weapon snapped to attention, catching the subtle shift of air, a door opening, a shadow moving. "Hastings, behind the desk," he hissed, pulling his friend down. A figure entered, cloaked and hooded, moving with the silent grace of a predator. Poirot's secret weapon analyzed the figure's gait. Tall, thin, deliberate, the same silhouette Tom had described in the stables. The figure paused, sensing something amiss, then approached the desk. Poirot held his breath, his cane ready, but the figure's hand reached for a ledger, flipping it open. "Now, Hastings," Poirot barked, springing up. Hastings lunged, tackling the figure, but the cloaked man was swift, twisting free and hurling a candlestick. It grazed Hastings' shoulder, and the figure bolted, triggering a hidden mechanism. A trapdoor opened, and flames erupted from a concealed oil lamp, licking at the curtains. Vite! Poirot shouted, grabbing the ledger and shoving Hastings toward the door. They stumbled through smoke, the manor's upper floor now ablaze, the fire spreading with unnatural speed. Poirot's secret weapon guided them, noting safe paths through the chaos, a window unbarred, a staircase still intact. They burst into the courtyard, coughing, the manor's silhouette glowing against the night. Hastings panted, clutching the ledger. That was too close, Poirot. The owls rigged the place to burn. Oui, Poirot said, his eyes fixed on the flames. He destroys evidence, but he cannot destroy the truth. This ledger is our prize. The chapter closed with Poirot and Hastings retreating to the moors, the ledger clutched tightly, Drumlanrig House burning behind them. The owl had slipped away, but the ledger held names, dates, and locations, a map of his network. Eleanor was alive, and Poirot's secret weapon had navigated the lair's dangers, bringing them one step closer to the truth. The hunt was far from over, but Poirot's resolve burned brighter than the flames consuming the owl's lair. Chapter 12. The final puzzle. The moors of the Scottish Highlands lay silent under a pre-dawn sky, the air sharp with the bite of frost, and the acrid tang of smoke from the smouldering ruins of Drumlanrig House. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the moor, his overcoat dusted with ash, his gloved hands clutching the ledger salvaged from the owl's lair. Its pages, marked with the owl motif, detailed a vast network of thefts, but more crucially, they held clues to Eleanor's fate and the owl's identity. Captain Hastings, his face smudged with soot, leaned against a gnarled tree, catching his breath after their harrowing escape. Poirot, Hastings panted, we've got the ledger, but the owl slipped us again. And that fire blazes. It was like he wanted to burn the whole place down. Oui, mon ami, Poirot replied, his voice steady despite the chaos. The fire was no accident. The owl destroys what he cannot control, but this ledger he could. Not destroy it in time. My secret weapon will use it to unmask him. That secret weapon, Poirot's unparalleled ability to read micro-expressions, body language, and now the subtle patterns in written clues, had guided them through the manor's traps. The ledger was a treasure trove, listing operatives, targets, and cryptic references to the hidden hand. But one name stood out, recurring in coded margins: Sir Malcolm Drake, a diplomat and longtime friend of the Ashford family. Poirot's mind raced, his secret weapon revisiting every encounter at the manor, every fleeting glance and gesture. Hastings, Poirot said, his eyes narrowing, do you recall Sir Malcolm Drake? He dined with the Ashfords the night before. The brooch was stolen. A charming man, Nan, yet his charm was too perfect. Hastings frowned, rubbing his chin. Drake, yes, I remember, tall, silver-haired, smooth as silk. You think he's the owl? Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind aligning the pieces. Consider, mon ami, Drake was present when the brooch was last seen. His name appears in this ledger, linked to thefts across England, and Eleanor, her fear, her secrecy began after his visit. My secret weapon confirms it. His micro-expressions, so carefully controlled, betrayed calculation to test his theory. Poirot re-examined the ledger under the faint light of a pocket lantern. The codes were complex, but his secret weapon drew on years of deciphering patterns. A marginal note, written in a cipher similar to the owl motif letters, mentioned a gala in London, hosted by Drake, where the final piece would be secured. Poirot's pulse quickened. The gala was tomorrow night at Drake's Mayfair residence. Eleanor, he suspected, was being held to ensure the Ashford's silence, and the gala was the Owl's endgame. "We must return to London," Poirot declared, tucking the ledger into his satchel. "Drake believes he has outwitted us, but he underestimates Hercule Poirot." The journey back was a blur of trains and telegrams. Poirot coordinating with Scotland Yard to monitor Drake's movements without alerting him. By evening, they were in London, the city's gaslights glowing through a drizzle that slicked the cobblestones. Poirot, now in his own attire, prepared for the gala with meticulous care, selecting a tailored suit and a discreet pocket for the sapphire brooch. Hastings, less enthused, donned a borrowed tuxedo, muttering about fancy parties and villains. "Patience, Hastings," Poirot said, adjusting his tie. "The gala is the Owl's stage, but we shall rewrite his script. My secret weapon will see through his mask." Drake's Mayfair residence was a vision of opulence, its chandeliers casting a warm glow over crystal flutes and silk gowns. The guest list was a who's who of London's elite politicians, financiers, and aristocrats mingling with practiced ease. Poirot's secret weapon scanned the crowd as they entered, noting the subtle tensions, a diplomat's forced smile, a lady's nervous glance, Drake's polished demeanor as he greeted guests. His silver hair gleamed, his eyes crinkling with charm. But Poirot caught a teller fleeting tightness in his jaw when their eyes met. "Sir Malcolm," Poirot said, bowing slightly, "a splendid evening. You are a man of many talents, Nan." Drake's smile was flawless, but his fingers brushed his cufflinks a nervous tick. Poirot's secret weapon flagged. "Monsieur Poirot, an unexpected pleasure. I heard you were investigating a trifling theft in Shropshire." "Trifling, perhaps," Poirot replied, his tone light but piercing. "Yet thefts, like secrets, have a way of growing larger." Drake's eyes flickered, but he excused himself to greet another guest. Poirot whispered to Hastings, "Watch him, mon ami. He is poised, but poised like a snake before it strikes." As the evening progressed, Poirot mingled, his secret weapon, attuned to the room's undercurrents. He overheard whispers of a private auction in Drake's study, reserved for select guests. The ledger's mention of a final piece echoed in his mind, likely another stolen artifact, or perhaps Eleanor herself, a bargaining chip to secure the Ashfords' compliance. Poirot slipped into the study during a lull, finding a locked cabinet with the owl motif etched into its handle. The brass key from Eleanor's room fit perfectly, revealing a velvet-lined box containing a diamond-encrusted tiara and a note. "Deliver to the buyer at midnight. The Owl commands." His secret weapon confirmed the tiara's significance, another piece in the Owl's collection, to be sold at the gala. Before he could act, a soft click sounded behind him. Poirot turned to find Marrow, her face pale, a small pistol trembling in her hand. "I'm sorry, Monsieur Poirot," she whispered. "The Owl, he knows I helped you. He'll kill my brother if I don't stop you." Poirot's secret weapon. Read her instantly, her shaking hands, her tear-filled eye-sphere, not malice. "Madame Moreau," he said, his voice calm, "you are no traitor. Lower the weapon. Together, we can save your brother and Eleanor." Marrow hesitated, then dropped the pistol, sobbing. "He's everywhere. The Gaelit's his trap." "Oui," Poirot said, guiding her to a chair. "But traps can be turned. Stay here and trust in Poirot." He summoned Hastings, briefing him on the plan. "Expose Drake at the gala's climax. using the ledger and the tiara as evidence. As midnight approached, Poirot positioned himself near the grand staircase, the brooch and tiara hidden in his coat. Drake announced a toast, his voice resonating through the ballroom, but Poirot's secret weapon caught a final tell, a glance toward a guarded door, where Eleanor might be held. The chapter closed with Poirot clutching the ledger, his heart steady. Despite the looming confrontation, the owl's identity was within reach, and Eleanor's fate hung in the balance. His secret weapon had pieced together the final puzzle, and the gala would be the stage for its revelation. Poirot was ready to end the game. Chapter 13. The Gala Showdown. The grand ballroom of Sir Malcolm Drake's Mayfair residence glittered with opulence, its crystal chandeliers casting prisms across the polished marble floor. The air was thick with the scent of champagne and ambition as London's elites swirled in a dance of power and pretense. Hercule Poirot stood near the grand staircase, his tailored suit impeccable, his moustache a perfect curve of resolve. In his pocket, the sapphire brooch and diamond tiara recovered from the owl's schemes were heavy with significance. The ledger from Drumlanrig House, tucked inside his coat, was his trump card, its pages detailing a criminal network led by the man now toasting his guests. Sir Malcolm Drake, the owl himself. Captain Hastings hovered nearby, his borrowed tuxedo slightly askew, his eyes darting through the crowd. "Poirot," he whispered, "Drake's got the room eating out of his hand. You sure about this? One wrong move, and we're done for." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his voice low but steady. "Mon ami, the stage is set, and the owl believes he holds the script. But my secret weaponit sees through his charade. Tonight, we end this." That secret weapon, Poirot's unparalleled ability to read micro-expressions, body language, and the subtle cues of human deceit, had brought him to this moment. The ledger's coded entries, Eleanor's disappearance, and Professor Lydia Murrow's coerced betrayal had all pointed to Drake. His secret weapon had caught. Drake's tells at the gala's outset, the fleeting tightness of his jaw, the calculated warmth in his smile, the way his fingers lingered on his cufflinks when Poirot mentioned the brooch. The diplomat's polished exterior hid a predator, and Poirot was ready to expose him. The gala was in full swing, violins weaving a delicate melody as guests sipped champagne and exchanged practiced pleasantries. Drake stood at the center, his silver hair catching the light, his voice resonant as he raised a glass. "To art, to beauty, and to secrets well kept," he said, his eyes sweeping the room. Pausing briefly on Poirot, Poirot's secret weapon hummed, catching the flicker of unease in Drake's gazer, predator sensing a threat. He leaned toward Hastings, whispering, "The guarded door by the east wing." Drake glanced there twice. "Eleanor is there, I am certain. Alert Scotland Yard, discreetly. They must be ready." Hastings nodded, slipping through the crowd to a telephone. In the foyer, where he relayed Poirot's instructions to a yard contact waiting nearby. Poirot, meanwhile, maneuvered through the guests, his secret weapon scanning the room. A woman in a sapphire gown adjusted her necklace nervously. A man in a military uniform stood too close to the east wing door. A waiter's tray trembled as he passed Drake. The owl's agents were here, their tension betraying their master's plan. As the orchestra paused, Poirot seized his moment. He ascended the staircase, his cane tapping authoritatively, drawing every eye. "Madame, et messieurs," he announced, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Forgive the interruption, but I, Hercule Poirot, have a revelation to share, a tale of theft, deception, and a shadow known as the owl." The room fell silent, glasses clinking as guests turned. Drake's smile froze, his hand tightening on his flute. Poirot's secret weapon caught the tell, a bead of sweat at Drake's temple, a slight shift in his stance. The owl was cornered. For weeks, Poirot continued, a sapphire brooch, stolen from Ashford Manor, has led us on a chase across England and France. But it was no ordinary theft. It was the work of the owl, a mastermind who orchestrates a network of crime, hiding behind a mask of respectability. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Drake stepped forward, his voice smooth but strained. Monsieur Poirot, this is a private event. Such theatrics are unbecoming. Theatrics, Nen, Poirot countered, producing the ledger. Truth, this ledger, recovered from a burning manor in Scotland, details your crimes, Sir Malcolm, thefts, blackmail, and a young woman, Eleanor, Ashford held captive to silence her family. Gasps echoed, and Drake's face paled, his fingers brushing. His cufflinks. Poirot's secret weapon confirmed his panic. Dilated pupils, a clenched jaw. You have no proof, Drake said, his voice rising. This is slander. Proof, Poirot said, holding up the sapphire brooch and the tiara. These were stolen, sold, and recovered from your agents in Paris. And this, he brandished the ledger, names you as the owl, orchestrating it all. The crowd parted, whispers turning to shouts. The man in the military uniform moved toward the east wing door, but Hastings, back from the foyer, blocked his path. Not so fast, mate, he growled, his fists ready. Drake's composure cracked, his eyes darting to the door. Enough. He barked, lunging for a side exit. But Poirot had anticipated this, having alerted the yard to seal all exits. 2 officers appeared, blocking Drake's path. The room erupted in chaos, guests scattering as Drake's agents tried to flee, only to be apprehended by more officers flooding in. Poirot descended the staircase, his voice calm but commanding. Sir Malcolm, your game is over. Where is Eleanor? Ashford, Drake, cornered, sneered. You think you've won, Poirot. The owl's wings are wide. You'll never find her. But Poirot's secret weapon had one final trick. He approached the east wing door, where the waiters, trembling, tray had betrayed a hidden passage. With a nod to an officer, he opened it, revealing a narrow staircase. At its base, in a locked room, they found Elena pale, disheveled, but alive, bound to a chair. Her eyes widened as Poirot cut her free, her voice a whisper. You found me. Oui, mademoiselle, Poirot said gently. The owl's shadow cannot hide from the light of reason. As Eleanor was escorted to safety, Drake was handcuffed, his charm replaced by a snarl. The ledger, brooch, and tiara were handed to Scotland Yard, sealing his fate. The guests, stunned, dispersed into the night, their whispers carrying the tale of the owl's downfall. The chapter closed with Poirot standing in the now empty ballroom, the ledger in his hand, the weight of the case settling over him. His secret weapon had triumphed, exposing Drake's network and saving Eleanor, but the victory was bittersweet. The owl's schemes had left scars, and Poirot felt the toll of his relentless pursuit. Yet, as he stepped into the London night, his resolve remained. Justice had been served, and the owl's wings were clipped. Chapter 14. The little grey cells rest the Shropshire countryside unfolded in a gentle haze. The late afternoon sun casting a golden glow over Ashford Manor's rolling lawns. The mist that had cloaked the estate for weeks had finally lifted, revealing a sky of soft blue, as if the heavens themselves exhaled in relief. Hercule Poirot stood on the manor's terrace, his polished shoes glinting, his moustache impeccably groomed, his hands clasped behind his back. In his pocket, the sapphire brooch rested, its return to Lord Ashford imminent. The owl, unmasked as Sir Malcolm Drake, was in Scotland Yard's custody, his network dismantled by the Ledger's revelations. Eleanor Ashford, rescued from Drake's Mayfair lair, was safe, though shaken, within the manor's walls. Yet Poirot's mind, ever restless, lingered on the case's echoes. His secret weapon, his unparalleled ability to read micro-expressions and body language still humming with the weight of what he had uncovered, Captain Hastings joined him. His tweed jacket rumpled, but his spirits high, a glass of brandy in hand. "Poirot, we did it," he said, his voice warm with triumph. "Drake's behind bars, Eleanor's home, the brooch is back. I'd say that's a job well done." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile, but his eyes were distant, fixed on the horizon where the sun dipped toward the hills. Mon ami, justice has been served. Yet the little grey cells, they do not rest so easily. The owl's shadow was long, and its mark lingers. The terrace doors opened, and Lord Ashford emerged. His broad shoulders stooped, but his face softened with gratitude. Behind him came Eleanor, her delicate features pale but resolute, her arm linked with Clara Duval's for support. Lady Beatrice followed, her sharp eyes softened for once, and Professor Lydia Murrow, now under yard protection, stood quietly at the rear, her expression a mix of relief and lingering guilt. "Monsieur Poirot," Lord Ashford said, his voice thick with emotion, "you've saved my daughter and our family's honour. The brooch, its return means more than I can say." Poirot inclined his head, producing the sapphire brooch from his pocket. Its facets caught the sunlight, casting blue sparks across the terrace. "It is my privilege, Lord Ashford. The brooch is yours, as it always was." Eleanor stepped forward, her hands trembling as she took the jewel. I thought I'd lost everything," she whispered. "Drakey knew things I'd buried. He used them against me." Piotr's secret weapon stirred, catching the flicker of shame in her eyes, the way her fingers clutched the brooch. "Mademoiselle Eleanor," he said gently, "the past is a chain only if you let it bind you. You are free now." She nodded, tears brimming, and Clara squeezed her hand, her own eyes misty. "You were brave, Eleanor," Clara said softly. "You fought him, even when he had you." Poirot turned to Marrow, his gaze steady but kind. "Madame Moreau, you too were ensnared by the owl's threats. Your brother is safe now, thanks to your courage in the end." Marrow's lips trembled, her glasses glinting as she looked away. "I betrayed you, Monsieur Poirot. I don't deserve your kindness." "Nan," Poirot said, his voice firm, "you chose truth over fear. That is enough." Lady Beatrice, uncharacteristically silent, offered a nod of respect. "You've done us a great service, Monsieur Poirot. The Ashford name is intact, thanks to you." Poirot's secret weapons scanned their faces one last time. Lord Ashford's gratitude, Eleanor's tentative hope, Clara's loyalty, Moreau's redemption, Beatrice's pride tempered by humility. The manor's wounds were healing, but Poirot felt the weight of his own secret weapon, a gift that illuminated truth but demanded relentless vigilance. Every micro-expression, every subtle gesture had been a thread in the tapestry of this case, but weaving them together had taken a toll. He stepped to the terrace's edge, gazing at the estate's gardens, where roses bloomed despite the autumn chill. "The owl was a master of deception," he said, almost to himself, But deception is a mirror, reflects only what we allow. My secret weapon, it sees beyond the mirror to the heart of truth. Hastings sipped his brandy, his brow furrowing. Your secret weapon, Poirot, that knack for reading people like books. It's uncanny, but doesn't it ever exhaust you? Always watching, always analyzing. Poirot's smile was wistful. We, Hastings, it is a gift and a burden, too. See the soul's secrets is to carry their weight. But it is my calling, and I bear it willingly. Lord Ashford cleared his throat. Monsieur Poirot, join us for dinner. It's the least we can do. Poirot hesitated, then nodded. Merci, Lord Ashford. I shall accept, but then I must depart. The little grey cells, they crave a moment of repose. The dinner was simple, but warm, the dining hall filled with the scent of roasted lamb and fresh bread. The family spoke of rebuilding, of moving forward, their voices lighter than Poirot had ever heard. Eleanor shared a tentative smile. Clara laughed softly at Hastings. Stories, and even Lady Beatrice softened, recounting a childhood memory of the brooch. Poirot listened, his secret weapon at rest, content to let the moment unfold without analysis. As the meal ended, Poirot rose, his cane in hand. Mise Amos, I take my leave. The owl is caged, and your home is whole. May it remain so. Eleanor approached, pressing a small velvet pouch into his hand. A token, Monsieur Poirot, not the brooch, just a keepsake, to thank you. Inside was a silver locket, engraved with a single rose. Poirot's heart warmed, and he bowed. You honor me, mademoiselle. The chapter closed with Poirot walking down the manor's drive, the locket in his pocket, the sun sinking behind the hills. Hastings walked beside him, the silence companionable. The case was over, the owl's network shattered, Eleanor safe, and the brooch restored. Poirot's secret weapon, his little grey cells, could finally rest, their work complete. As the first stars emerged, Poirot felt a rare peace, his steps light, his heart content. The game was won, and the truth had prevailed.